Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
You know, when I was in high school, it was the 80s. There was, really kind of on the tail end of the space age, or we 10 years earlier had landed on the moon, and there was a lot of talk about STEM and intelligence and where the world was going, and there was certainly talk of computers, not like we talk about them now. I mean, computers were just something that a company owned or companies could invest in. But there were the likes of Albert Einstein and other people like that, and we talked about IQ and just how smart people were, and how that really mattered. And when you're dealing with the sciences and the numbers and things like that, it kind of matters. And to be honest, I don't know that I was I wasn't dumb, but I don't know that I was totally comfortable with those sorts of, I went to physics. I liked it. It just, I didn't love it. Right. I didn't love it. And so IQ was a really big thing, but as time has moved on, I've started to realize that, somebody's IQ is kind of like, so what? I mean, I've known lots of smart people, and they're a-holes. And I've known people who aren't very intelligent, and they're really wonderful people. The person who comes to mind is R. David Thomas, the founder of Wendy's, huge charity, adoption charity. And I heard him speak, and I was just totally amazed at how he butchered the English language. But the guy was just a wonderful human being. And that's what it really comes down to. And we know of IQ. What we know lesser about is EQ. And today I have on the program with me Gordon D. Melville, and he's coming from us from the great country of Canada. But he's the king of EQ. He's got a digital radio program. He's a podcaster, TV personality. He refers to himself as the long bearded guy. And he's a mindset and energy coach for a pro basketball team. He really does a lot, and a lot of it is centered around this notion of EQ. He's worked with the likes of Grant Cardone, Tony Robbins, Zig Ziglar, and he's got his own coaching specialization, all centered around this EQ thing. So we're gonna kick around EQ on this program. I guess, Gordon, welcome to the program. I'll shut up. We're almost 3 minutes in. I haven't let you say a damn thing. So
I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me, Frank.
EQ. What is EQ?
Emotional quotient. You hear people refer to emotional intelligence, and it's not really an intelligence. That's a different conversation. But I was on a podcast recently, and the gentleman asked me, what's most important, IQ, EQ, or SQ? And I started to laugh, and he goes, what? I said, well, take SQ right off the table. Most people don't know what IQ or EQ is, let alone SQ. So, and then we got into that conversation a little bit around what that means. And as you and I were alluding to earlier, back in the day, they used to say, people don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. That's EQ. That's emotional quotient. That's how we interact with other people. And we all know people that, I'm thinking Sheldon Cooper, lots of IQ, but no EQ and absolutely no SQ.
Sheldon Cooper from
Big Bang Theory.
The Big Bang Theory thing, yeah.
Right. Yep. House is a good example, right? Really ignorantly high IQ, but had so little EQ or SQ that he didn't even understand he was being rude or ignorant to. He just had no concept of that because he didn't know what he'd said wrong. And so now by the end of their seasons, both for Big Bang and for House, they both of those characters had some EQ. It wasn't high, but they did have some because over time they learned. And I think that's being able to plug into that and learn, if my EQ goes up, if my emotional quotient goes up, then all my life gets better. My relationships get better. I become a better dad and husband and father and brother and uncle and employer and employee, because now I can interact with people in a much, much better way. And I can look after myself in a much, much at a much higher level.
Yeah, you know what? For those who don't know, I attended law school. I have a law degree. I practiced law for a while. And law school is 3 years. I happen to be there 4 years, not because I'm dumb, but I got an MBA at the same time. So I saw 4 years of graduating classes, and every year, and to just let people know about law school, at least in the United States, it's much like high school. You're at one building, you get a locker, you're there all day, and you really get to know people. Whereas in college, it's little pockets of people, and you might cross paths or might not, depending upon where you live. But at any rate, in law school, you got to know people and you got to know people's stories. And there was always one person, and not to be sexist, it was usually a guy who was finishing at the top of his class, very intelligent. You know, I mean, it does take a lot of intelligence in law school to get in and certainly to do well, who couldn't find a job because of EQ. They were super intelligent, you know, great grades, wrote for the law review or worked on the law review, all sorts of, you know, all the accolades, but just was painfully unaware of how to deal with people, how to interact, you know?
Absolutely. Well, that's a more of a male, and again, not to be sexist, but guys tend to not have that EQ at the same level as ladies do.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that as a blanket thing that no man has EQ and every
Sure.
woman does, because that's not true. But you know, I was a buddy of mine in a restaurant a few weeks ago. He said to me, "I don't think that's right." And I said, "Wait right here." And I stood up in the middle of the restaurant. I walked over to three complete strangers, women, and I asked them how they were. "Hey, I'm doing a quick survey. How you doing? Like, what's going on for you today? How are you feeling?" And the three of them both, they all three of them told me how they were doing. And the last one told me that she'd been diagnosed with cancer 3 weeks before.
Oh,
And I got back to the table, and my buddy's like, "I can't believe that woman shared something so intimate with a complete stranger." And I said to him, what's the downside? Do you know what I mean? Like, what
yeah.
I'm going to stand there and go, "Oh, sucks to be you." Like, that's not happening. So, you know, why is that? As guys, we were taught to hold our emotions in. Don't let anybody see it. Don't show your emotion. Don't cry. Don't look weak. And so we do one of two things as guys. We either push it down and hold that dis-ease in our bodies, which makes us sick, or we put the emotions in a box and we put them on the shelf because we were taught not to deal with that. Either way, we have residual pain from that.
Yeah.
So what do we now? We're trying to dull the pain. So how do we do that? Drugs, alcohol, smoking, porn, whatever
Right.
it is, gambling. Right now, I have a vice on top of the problem, and eventually I have an addiction on top of the problem, which is going to hurt me even more than just trying to deal with the stuff originally. Right.
Right.
But we don't identify it that way. We don't. If you ask guys, "Hey, what's your problem?" They'll tell me, "Well, my wife doesn't listen to me, or I go on dates and the girl never called me back, or you know, my kids don't listen to me," or whatever it is. That's how they hear it. They wouldn't tell you, "Hey, my EQ is low," right?
Yeah.
That I need higher emotional quotient.
Well, it's, you know, I think depending upon age, we weren't really aware of it.
True.
I mean, it was always there, right? I mean, it's like the sun has always been there. You know, we thought that the sun revolved around the earth, right? I mean, it's just and now we've kind of learned things over time, and we learn that there are these things out there, and our minds and our bodies do things. And you'd mentioned it earlier. You know, you start pushing these emotions down, you get sick, and it manifests itself differently in different people.
Absolutely.
But we're starting to see the connection and the causation of these sorts of things.
It starts to be awareness is a big deal for me, because we can't deal with it. You can't fix it or until there's an awareness, right? You talk about, you know, at some point they thought, well, the sun revolves around the earth. They thought the earth was flat, right? There's all these, and then they become aware, okay, sort of a when I know better, I'll do better, that kind of a concept, right? And so as we continue to move forward and grow and expand our mind and expand what our awareness is around who we're being, that's a huge deal. Who are we being as opposed to what we're doing, right? Working with pro athletes, they look at me and go, Gord, I retired yesterday. I don't know who I am. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't know who you are? You're the same lovable a-hole you were yesterday,
Yeah.
because what you did is not who you are. But
Right.
we conflate those, right? And so we get our identity there. And instead of being able to say, no, who am I being, right? And so that awareness around that will raise our EQ. Once we understand who we're being and who we want to be, then our emotional quotient will go up. We'll become more aware of and once we're aware, then we can do something about it, right? Then we can teach. I teach tools and strategies to be able to raise those vibrations and to be able to deal with their emotion. I teach 7 levels of emotional intelligence for men. Why? Because typically we lack in that area. And so, trying to help guys, and as a suicide survivor, I have a specific, unique perspective on deep depression and suicide. And so, we've all heard life's not happening to us, it's happening for us. But I think it's happening for us to specifically and uniquely equip us to help other people get through what we went through. And it's kind of the final level of healing. If we can help somebody else get through it, we're healing ourselves. And so, being able to share that kind of thing, I want the depression rate to go down, the suicide rate to go down. And it's been a challenge, because I get lots of guys that will look at me and go, good buddies, that will go, Gord, I'm okay. What you're doing is critical. It's very important that this happens. I'm okay, but I know some guys that need that. And I want to go, okay, well, wait. It's kind of like buying insurance. You have to buy insurance when you're healthy, because when you need it, you don't qualify anymore.
Right.
So putting the tools in our toolbox to be able to deal with our emotional quotient, to deal with the emotions we're feeling, we have to do when we're feeling good. Because when we're not, and we're in a down place, it's very difficult to deal with that and try and find good tools.
Right.
And so guys are women try more than men to give their souls back to Papa, but men succeed 5-1 over their female counterparts. And so they're choosing a permanent solution to a temporary problem, but they don't have the tools they need to get it done. And it's not having 1 or 2, it's having dozens and dozens, because what works this time might not work next time.
Yeah.
Right. And then to be able to help other people. I've got 3 teen sons. What works for me might not work for them. So I need some other ways to deal with it. So I just keep adding tools and adding tools, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's the numbers are alarming. I have 2 sons, and pretty well adjusted, pretty confident, I don't worry about them. They have friends I worry about. And it's just, I think part of it is I have chosen a business, I've chosen a career that's very dependent, it taps into EQ. I mean, it does.
Right.
It's, whereas if I were an engineer or an accountant or something like that, it would be a different story.
Absolutely.
And it's, we're all trying, men especially, I mean, again, not to be sexist, but it is what it is.
Right.
Primarily are drawn to what's his name, Gordon Peterson. He talks about, women are drawn to people. Women are people, and men are drawn to things, engineering,
Right.
numbers. And what's happening, generally speaking, is technology is allowing us to do is really leveling the playing field with respect to dealing with things, because I can figure out what the hypotenuse of a particular, I can just go online, I can look these things up, right?
Google.
but you
Yep.
can't go online and look up how to have a relationship, because
Right.
it's an infinite number of variables.
Right.
The same
Yep.
person on a different day is, it's a totally different thing. You need to learn to
Absolutely.
be able to read people,
Right.
and that's huge.
It is.
It's not a language. It's,
Well,
you
and
know,
there's places to go. I've been a huge, I've got a whack of books around me that I've read. I've got one sitting here. 6 Minute X-Ray
okay.
is a book by Chase Hughes, and he wrote the book on human behavior, how to read people, I mean, part of what he did was create like a uh, like a periodic table,
Mm-hmm.
except with human behavior. So it
Oh,
looks exactly the same, but to be able to, well, and that he did it based on um, his mom and him were watching The Bachelorette years and years and years ago.
okay.
And he said, "Mom, which lady do you like?" And she told him, and he said, "Why do you like her?" "Well, there was this and this and this." And he's like, "Yeah, but she's lied to him like 4 or 5 times, and and how do you know that?" Well, so anyway, he wrote this thing that now hangs in the CIA and the FBI, and it's used for interrogation of, spies and whatever. Um, but it goes deep, deep, deep into, it's not just whether they're being truthful or not. It goes deep into who they are as a human. And 6 Minute X-ray, um, in less than 6 minutes with certain questions, you can find out everything you want to know about somebody
Mm,
very, very quickly if you ask the questions correctly. And Chase is amazing. But again, being that guy, right? I've
yeah.
got books in here about leadership behavior DNA, that goes to how you're wired, right? How not just things like Myers-Briggs are based on what you've learned. So you could do it every year and get a different answer, because as you grow and as you learn, it'll change. But some of these are, bank is another one that's based literally on how you're wired as a human being. So you
Yeah.
can do it as often as you want. It'll never change because it's how your brain is wired. And
Right.
so learning how we are, if I can learn about myself, it'll help me be able to read other people, right? If I'm aware of who I'm being and how I'm operating, then it allows me to interact, right, with somebody else. If I know bank is big with that, BANK, um, it's blueprint is to be, that's your accountants and your engineers and whatever, that's how they operate. But if I understand that's who I'm talking to, then I can change the way I'm speaking to be able to have them understand what I'm talking about, because they are understanding it a certain way. If I come at them with lots of um, uh, nice kumbaya type stuff, that nurturing stuff is the
Yep.
N in bank.
Right.
They don't hear me because that's not how they assimilate information, right? So being able to know very quickly, um, so A is action, K is knowledge. But if you understand how they operate, how they think, how they're wired, it makes a lot of things easier. But again, you're talking EQ. You're talking how are they emotionally set, and then to be able to talk to them that way, to be able to engage them better.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been through the bank program. I interviewed Chase Hughes on my
Yeah,
podcast.
very cool.
He's a body language expert. I stumbled upon him watching YouTube videos. He and three other guys
Me
would get
too.
on there, and they would watch someone's testimony, or like Bill Clinton giving testimony, and point out all the little things,
Right.
and it was just
Mhm.
fascinating to me. So I
Unbelievable.
reached out to him. Yeah, no, but it's we
Great guy.
yeah, it's we again, using science as a parallel, you know
Yeah.
rays from the earth have been hitting the planet forever,
Right.
and it's only recently, in relative terms, that we've really understood this.
Mhm.
It's not that, okay, now we know this is happening. No, it's always been happening. We just
Right.
know. And it's
Right.
kind of the same thing with being able to uh, read people's body language, or read people. I don't want to say to read their minds, but kind of read where they're coming from, like the bank perspective, right?
Right. Right.
What type of personality do they have, or what's their
Exactly.
buying behavior is really how I describe bank.
Yep.
It's always been there, but now we're aware of it.
Right.
And it's like, okay, we can do something with this.
Right. But once it's aware, right, the tools are out there.
Yeah.
Right. But somebody that's illiterate and somebody that can and doesn't read are on the same level.
Yeah.
Right. I was talking to somebody, I read 5 to 7 books, business books a month, and I have for almost 35 years. But I was laughing with somebody recently, and they were like, well, some people don't read at all. That's one category of people. And then there's a category that love to buy books. They love how that looks in the library. They've never cracked one open, but they love how they look in the library.
Right.
And then you have another group of people that love to buy books. They love to read books, but they don't do anything with that information. And then there's a group of people that buy the books, read the books, and then have that affect them and use the information. Well, that's sort of where you can know it, but knowledge isn't power. Applied knowledge is power. Being able to use that, right? But it takes an awareness, first of all, and then it takes a desire to intentionally grow. There's lots of people that they understand what the problem is. The statistic I heard was less than 3% of the population does any kind of personal development. Less than 3%. So most people hear it and it doesn't affect, like they don't allow it to, doesn't change who they are.
Right.
Right. They don't implement any of that.
No, I mean, I heard you say the 3% number when we first met, and at first that kind of startled me, but then I stopped and thought about it. It's like, okay, you know what? I think it's higher because I hang with a lot of people who do personally develop, right?
Right.
If you're tall and you hang out with tall people, you think everybody's tall.
Right. Absolutely.
But when I stopped and I stood back, and all you need to do is go and walk into a bar on a Tuesday night and, okay, these people aren't personally developing. Chances are. That's a horrible generalization, but you know what I mean?
I know what you mean. Yeah.
That guy was there. He'll be here tomorrow night,
Right.
And you have other people. Then obviously you have TV shows that people watch, religiously watch.
Right.
And so it's, the number is probably correct.
Right. Well, and like you say, you get into that hothouse, right? People that you and I hang out with, lots of them have podcasts, lots of them have books, lots of them, right? That's just, we go, oh, everybody's got it. Well, no, they don't, right?
Yeah.
But because of the people we hang out with, lots of them do. But they say, and I've stopped trying to find like-minded people years ago. I want growth-minded people, right? Because like-minded people could be eating bonbons and drinking beer at the bar every night. That's still a like-minded person. I'm looking for people that are growth-minded, and whether they're brand new into that space or whether they've been doing it for decades and decades and decades, if they're growth-minded, that'll inspire me. Watching them will inspire me. And if I become the average, not the high end, but the average of the 5 people I spend the most amount of my time with, then, birds of a feather tend to flock. So, again, to your point, I'm going to keep coming into that space with a bunch of people that are exactly like me, that are growth minded, that are looking to intentionally grow, not organically grow, intentionally put themselves out there, get comfortable being uncomfortable, because that's where they know they're going to grow.
Yeah. Well, let's shift gears here. Let's talk about your business, the types of things you do, who you're looking for, how people can help, and how they can certainly get a hold of you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. I'm a legacy and resiliency strategist, is the way I describe that, and a champion mindset mentor. So a lot of it comes back to our mindset, how our brain is wired, how we're thinking. And so I teach, I do one-on-one mentorship. I do group mentorship through a program I call Box Inside Out, which came about. It's not outside the box thinking. It's eradicate the box, burn the box. There's no box. Just find a way to have some tools and strategies to be able to deal with stuff head on, and then have a frozen moment and let them go. So, like I say, there's lots of different ways. I have my own podcast and TV show and live radio show every week. As far as how they can help, there's always, if you're looking to help move forward or move this kind of a thought process forward and help guys, there's always sponsorship opportunities. There's opportunities, obviously, to plug in and listen to the stuff, listen to my podcasts and whatnot. Read the books. I had another one go #1 bestseller this year on relationships, oddly enough. But me and some friends put that book together, and it's done very, very well. But there's lots of ways. And then, like I say, you can reach out to me, jewil.coaching, but Jewil is Jewil, which sometimes confuses people a little bit. So I tend to use the longbearded guy at gmail.com is easier to remember sometimes for people. So I don't know why they use that kind of a way to describe me, but the long-bearded guy.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
This is an audio podcast. People can't see. He's got a very long beard. He's very long beard.
Very long beard.
Yeah. I really appreciate your time today. This is fascinating stuff.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be with you and with your community, and to be able to share. I've heard lots of great things about you, and it's just an honor to be able to share and to put that message out, right? My mission is to have a meaningful impact, positive impact on more than 10 million men globally. So, that helps it get out. It helps spread that message. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for letting me.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today, and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.